Father, we thank you for bringing this gathering together to us under this event. And please help guide the leaders that we have and help them make the right decisions for the common good. And help those who are not in leadership positions understand the stresses and strains of leadership and better appreciate the leaders that we have. And may we also continue in a good, honest exchange of ideas in a healthy atmosphere for the betterment of our nation. In Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with the unity of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. And if you please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, if you don't already know, my name is Jennings, president of the Chattanooga Tea Party. Welcome to our first meeting for the year. And Randy is on the way. I did get a phone call from him. He was stuck behind a train in Hickson, which apparently continues to cause controversy and challenges for traffic. But he says once he gets clear of that, he can be here in about 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm sure he'll be on time. And we've got enough going on before that. So we'll just warm up the crowd for Randy. I've got a few housekeeping notes for members and others. Just note that we'll try to finish promptly at 8 o'clock tonight. There'll probably be an opportunity to ask questions with Randy. If I could ask you just to keep them short and to the point and not go speechifying, that would be deeply appreciated. Also note, Barbara Gilbert has some shirts that you might want to look at back there. Part of the proceeds from those shirt sales will go to the Chattanooga Tea Party. Barbara actually was a co-founder of the Cleveland Tea Party, and we are thankful that they came on down to share their shirts. And Barbara shared a picture of me with her shirt on. I think that she's basically wearing at least that design with Donald Trump Jr., so I think he appreciated that. And if you'll note, there is a donation jar in the back of the room. We appreciate all your donations. It just allows us to move forward and continue with the programming, pay for rent on this room. Or feel free to pick up my business card back there. You can mail donations if that's more convenient. We have a P.O. box in Harrison. But we're deeply grateful for any assistance you provide. And also please note there are free booklets from the Patriot Post back there on our founding documents. Feel free, if you know of a classroom that is studying U.S. government, and I'm sure there are classes that really still do that these days, I hope. Feel free to pick up, I have plenty to go around that we still have left from our David Barton event last year. So I'll be happy to help if you've got a classroom in mind. Also note that on the chairs I've got these little strips of paper. We are increasing our social media presence with the help of Chris Matthews, who many of you know, with the help of his designer and a couple other people have upgraded the Hamilton County GOP website as well and made that a lot more socially proactive. So we plan on trying to maximize our footprint as much as possible, particularly in this, an election year. And I'll note that if you haven't already seen him, Randy has entered the building, so where is Randy? Oh, there, okay, sorry about that. So just on those social media, if you just follow us or like us as appropriate on each of those, you can be on the edge of what people are thinking, because we have a pretty vigorous group of people that participate in our discussions on social media, and it's probably good to get a good sense of what everybody's thinking about. We do have some upcoming speakers that we're in the process of scheduling. Next month, we'll have Ben Brandon of the Project Appleseed organization. He's going to have a couple of his friends here. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the events that have been going on in Virginia with the clash against Second Amendment freedoms there by the Democratic legislature and the governor. So he's going to provide a little bit of an update on that, but his main thrust will be looking a little bit at the history of the pre-revolutionary era and how much of what happened back then continues to inform our riflemen. If you're not familiar with Project Appleseed, that is a really nice program. I participated in a weekend program in Manchester a few years ago. They basically teach you how to shoot, techniques used to zero in your rifle, and how to shoot consistently, accurately. It takes, like anything else, a lot of practice, but I heartily recommend that program to you, and I think it'll be a really entertaining opportunity. For the March, possibly April time frame, I'm already talked to Dr. Lucian Ellington at UTC. He's a professor of education, but he's also spoken on the miseducation of civics and citizenship in America. So I thought, since this is what we have proclaimed the year of the citizen 2020, I thought that would be a good topic to get into. And I've also talked to Rhonda Thurman. I know typically the school board meets on the third Thursday of the month when we meet, so we're going to adjust our schedule. But I think looking at the upcoming schedule for the school budget and how that will affect county budgets as well, I think it would be good timing to get Rhonda in here and provide us with a little bit of an update from the school board perspective and from her unique perspective on the school board. So first, if you'll bear with me, if I can ask Donald to come up. Donald O'Connor, I want to introduce him. He's a member of this business improvement district in downtown Chattanooga. He's going to tell you a little bit about it. He's on the board, and he wants to make a report to update all of you. So, Donald.
Okay, thank you. I'm planning to talk for about 5 minutes, and I hope I can talk for less than 5 minutes and have time. Do you want to can you dim this light just a little?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the situation. The Business Improvement District downtown is brand new. It started January 1st. So the board is just, we're trying to get things up and running. We haven't started yet. And one of the first things we need to do, we're going to hire an executive director. Oh, sorry. Okay, the Business Improvement District downtown is just getting started. The first thing we have to do is hire an executive director, and after we hire an executive director, we're going to hire a vendor, one or more vendors, to actually do the work. And in the process of negotiating the requirements for both of those, there's like civil rights or equal rights provisions that we have to have in the contracts and in the RFPs for them. And so we started looking at that at our previous meeting in December, and they asked the board, the executive committee asked the board for comments. And one of the comments that I put in there is that what they originally submitted had terms such as gender identity and sexual orientation, which are interesting beliefs, but they're all covered under freedom of religion. They don't need to have special provisions for these particular beliefs that exceed the beliefs of anybody else. So I did get those removed in the negotiations with a consultant that's helping us do that. However, when we took this to the executive committee, and by the way, I want to say up front, all the people on the board are really good people. This is not like they're the enemy, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about the situation they're in. These are small business owners, and they understand in their small businesses, they're required to follow EEOC guidelines. So they said, no, we got to follow EEOC guidelines. So they removed what was agreed to, and this was put into draft 4. And so that was a week ago at the executive meeting. So I knew nothing about the actual EEOC requirements. So in the past week, I've had to research the EEOC website. Now, what I found out in the EEOC website, well, let me start here. We got freedom of religion, which basically is anything anybody believes, which also would be gender identity and sexual orientation. However, in the EEOC guidelines, they put gender identity and sexual orientation in the category of sex and pregnancy. Well, now sex is a physical object. Our sex, our male or female sex, is determined by our DNA, our physical DNA in our body. We either have male DNA, in which case we're male, or we don't have, those who don't have male DNA are females. And then pregnancy is also a physical condition where the body of one or more unborn children is located inside the body of the mother. So these two are, even if they were to be left in there, they're in the wrong place. They belong here. But my argument also was they don't belong here as special, given special identity because of their names. They're just like any other religious belief. They can just be covered right here. Okay, so this is, here's what I learned about the EEOC. The legislation that formed the EEOC is very good legislation. It's simple legislation. But when you go to the EEOC website, it goes way beyond the legislation. Now, and let me go back a step. Remember I said they brought, the reason those board members wanted to change it, they're small business people. They are thoroughly intimidated by the EEOC when the EEOC goes beyond what the legislation says. In other words, the EEOC has the finger pointed at every single small business owner in the country and saying, you either do things our way or we're going to sue you so much it'll put you out of business. You're going to run out of money before you can actually win any case against us. So that's why they're intimidated. It's not that they necessarily agree with the language. It's just that they've learned the hard way from all of their industries that you do it EEOC's way or you got to come up with a bunch of money to fight them. So anyhow, this is one of the most egregious examples. This web page, this is part of a web page on the EEOC website. And here's where the EEOC claims that it can not only has the authority to defend somebody's beliefs, but here's provisions where the EEOC says that they can force other people to participate in somebody's beliefs. And this is the case here where denying an employee equal access to a common restroom corresponding to the employer's gender identity. All right, we've all heard about the men who think they're women. All right, well, they want to believe that. Well, that's fine. But this is going a step further. This is saying you have to share their beliefs. You have to participate in their beliefs. And then down here, harassing an employee because of a gender transition, such as by intentionally and persistently failing to use the name and gender pronoun that corresponds to the gender identity in which the employee identifies, yada, yada, yada.
Donald, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
To cut to the chase here.
Yeah.
Do you think they did the bid partially to try to get these things enforced?
No, because, and we won. I won. And I'll get that into just a minute. Actually, I think I'm just about down there. Yeah, this language is way beyond the scope of the legislation. The EEOC has no authority whatsoever to be doing any of this nonsense, and I'm sure this is a leftover from the Obama administration.
So the bureaucrats.
Probably, could be. Okay, so this is the final language we actually adopted. And the terms I found objectionable are left out. Where this language came from, our president went to our lawyer, and the lawyer drafted this, and I looked at it and I said, well, that's acceptable. And one more thing I want to tell you that about the previous page. The very last line in the previous page, note that the U.S. Department of Justice's position regarding Title VII. Title VII is the authorization for EEOC of the Civil Rights Act. Coverage of LGBT-related discrimination differs from that of the EEOC. So again, you see where there's differences. Now, it gives you this web page, but when I went to it, it was blank. Now, what that tells me is that the Department of Justice under Attorney General Barr, he's just farther ahead of the game than the EEOC is at trying to drain the swamp. And they're still in the process of draining the swamp. I'm not even sure if the EEOC has even started. I just don't know. But I'm sure that because of the Department of Justice's difficulties that we've all been aware of in recent years, that they're getting a lot of scrutiny, and the president has said to Mr. Barr, you got to fix all this stuff. All right, that's my formal presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
I noticed you said unlawful about violating some of the things in there, such as maybe calling someone not arresting people, and then they gradually move over to that.
Well,
facetious, but
well, okay. See, arrest would be for a criminal. This is not criminal. This is purely civil. But what they're trying to say is, you follow our beliefs, you abandon your beliefs and follow our beliefs, or we're going to fine you, and we're going to, or even if we think we might lose, we're going to just initiate so many court cases against you that you're going to have to surrender to us because you won't have the money to defend yourself.
Now, are these private entities, or is that the way the government do it?
That is the government. That's the EEOC of the federal government.
So
And with which basically it means they have infinite resources and you don't. So you better follow them, or they're going to apply their infinite resources against you.
What department is that under? EEOC?
EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And again, that, it doesn't really matter what department it is, but it is authorized in legislation. It started out with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There's been a few additions to that for veterans and certain types of disabilities, which are all reasonable. And the EEOC by itself, I mean, the original legislation is very well written. It's very simple. It really is necessary. But the trouble is the EEOC is going way beyond what the legislation calls for.
I'm going to bring up the lights here, Donald.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Some of us aren't real familiar with the bid. I've had it characterized to me as the businesses downtown did this because they weren't getting sufficient services from the city government. Is that wrong, or is that
Yeah, that's not correct. And by the way, everybody who lives in the bid district or owns commercial property in the bid district had the opportunity to vote on it, on whether we wanted it or not. And I did vote for it after I studied it. But the basic principle of it is that the city keeps the city government keeps the city clean. The goal of the bid district is to try to make the bid district itself sparkle. And that's because it is the center point of our tourist industry, which is our #1 industry. So that's what the bid district is going to focus on. And what I'm going to judge the bid district on is it actually making it sparkle like they promised us that they would do.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First, let me tell you a little bit about Randy. Most of you already know a little bit about him. He's been on the county commission since, I think, what is it, 2011? 2014, okay. And he has served District 1 in Soddy Daisy, the northwest corner of the county. And he has been one of the most staunch commissioners against the increases of taxes that we've seen. There always, every year, seems to be a lot of emphasis by media, by Democrats on the commission to try to increase property taxes on people, bring up other possible tax venues to be considered. So we appreciate Randy standing thwart the taxers and saying we stop. So right now he's running for the property assessor position for Hamilton County. So he's going to tell you a little bit about that. And I heard a little bit about his presentation at Nightside Pachyderm, and I think you'd be well advised. And if you have any questions, if you hold them until the end, I'm sure we'll have a little bit of time for that. So would you please welcome Randy Fairbanks.
Good, I can just roll this where I want to go, can't I? And I thought the train caught us. I thought our state representative Smith got rid of that, but apparently it's still on. But the train caught us in Hickson, and then it finally stopped, and we had to come back around. Y'all, we were nervous as everything, but I see that didn't affect us that much. So thank you, Brendan, for letting me come tonight and spend just a few minutes. He was telling me, giving me kind of some parameters and some time limits, and I said, you won't have to give me much time limits. I don't usually speak a lot and take a lot of time, but I do thank you. I'd like to start off, he did mention me serving on the county commission. I'm in my second term, and I'd like to recognize, he mentioned something about standing against some tax increases. We had one this last term can y'all hear me without this? Oh, okay. You can't? Okay. Well, if I forget and do it down, just do like this. But we did have a tax increase vote this last time, and then we had a wheel tax vote this last time. But and like Brendan said, we did stand against that. But I want to recognize I've got two colleagues here that's with me tonight. Chester Bankston, who serves District 9, and then Sabrina Smedley, who serves District 7. And as you know, this, yeah, give me a hand. And as you know, Brendan, those two have been with me all the way in standing against the higher taxes we were talking about and some of the tax increases lately. So I appreciate the way they work and the way we can work together. I'd like to start off with just a few facts about me personally. My wife Marty's here with me tonight. We've been married 39 years. And up until recently, when I heard her talking to someone, I thought it was all great. And I heard her tell someone, she said, oh yeah, me and Randy's been married 39 years. And she said, 6 of them happily married. So that kind of startled me, but to me, it's all been good. It's all been good. I love you, sugar. You're good to me. I have 2 daughters, Megan, and she has a husband, Zach, who had my first grandson, Zager, and he's 2.5. And then Lauren, my younger daughter, is married to Jacob, and her daughter is Landon, my first granddaughter, who's 11 months old. So you can tell she's what?
4 months.
She's 4 months old?
4 months.
Goodness gracious. Oh, 11 weeks I've got.
Oh, okay.
11 weeks, not months, weeks. They grow up fast. So, as you can tell, and I always like to tell this wherever I speak, I start off with that because the most important thing to me is my family. You know, I love serving. I love being in politics and serving the people. I enjoy it. But I often tell people, if it ended tomorrow, would I miss it? Yes. But would my life be over or would I be stunned? No. I love my family. I live for my family. My family is what means the most to me. And that's why I always like to start off telling them about my family. I graduated from UTC in 1978 with a bachelor's degree in accounting and finance, and I've worked in the accounting field for about 40 years. I've been a CPA for about 30 of those 40 years, and I worked in private practice for several years, and then 2008, I started my own CPA practice. So I've had my own practice since 2008. One of my hobbies that I've had over the years is I was a high school football referee for 40 years. And that's what gave me, when you're in accounting, you sit a lot and stuff, you need a stress relief. So I was a football referee for 40 years, which didn't coincide a lot with me going into politics because I made a lot of enemies in 40 years when I'm refereeing, you know, and a lot of disagreements, but I made a lot of friends too on there. And but although I was elected, like Brendan said, to the county commission in 2014, I wasn't a newcomer to politics. Me and my wife worked in campaigns over the years. We've been involved about 25 years in serving. We've been a member of the Pachyderm Club for about 25 years and served in that board. And then we served in the Young Republicans when we were really, I think, too old to be in the Young Republicans, but they let us be in there anyway. We served on that board. And then over the 25 years we've worked in campaigns, helping conservatives get elected. And I just wrote a few down here. We worked in Zach Wamp's campaign, Gerald McCormick, Jack Sharp. Does any of y'all remember Jack Sharp? Served in East Ridge. Great guy, Jack Sharp. He's passed on now, but a great, very conservative, served in the legislature, a great guy. And then, of course, we worked in Bill Bennett's campaign when he ran. And like Brendan said, in 2004, I was elected to the commission from District 1. And in that time, I ran against an incumbent who had been in office for 17 years. And he was a Republican, but he had been in office 17 years. But the people in my district had just come to me and said, hey, you know, he's done some good things in the past, but we want to change. Do you think you might run? And so we ran a grassroots campaign, all we ever know how to run. And we ran a grassroots campaign. And I always tell people that when you hear the old saying, every vote counts. Well, in this election, I wrote down the results here. In this election, there was 2,700 votes cast, and we won by 51 votes. Every vote counts. Everything you do, every people you talk to, it counts. Early voting, we were ahead 31 votes, and then on election day, we won by 20 votes. So it's 51 votes total. So you've got to work hard. You got to get out there and work hard, which we always try to do. And I was reelected in 2018 in a Republican primary, just this last time when we ran, with 73% of the vote up in my district. In my 6 years on the commission, my voting record will show that I've been a strong conservative voice for the district for District 1 and all of Hamilton County. I've shown strong leadership while I've been on the county commission, which is why my fellow commissioners have elected me chairman twice, and I've been vice chairman twice. I've also served on the Finance Committee, which is one of the strongest committees on there. I've served on that for 3 terms. So ever since except for that first year on the commission, I've held a leadership role in our county commission, elected by my fellow commissioners on the commission. The couple of things I'm most proud of on my service on the county commission is, number one, standing up for the senior citizens. Ever since I've been in office, I've always had a heart for the senior citizens, and that comes from personal experience. I've seen my parents when they were older try to make ends meet, and I've seen my in-laws try to make things, try to make ends meet when they were older. So that gave me a perspective of what seniors go through in trying to make it, and that led me to stand against some of the tax increases that I hear from the senior citizens that said we just can't afford to pay anymore. And then the other strong thing I'm proud of that I've stood for is people's property rights. And we've had that come up several times on the commission, and I'll give you a few examples of property rights. Up on Bakewell Mountain in my district, some people tried to start a gun club, and they put it right close to some houses that were being built up there. Well, I went to work and researched that, and did a lot of research on that, because they were saying, hey, the noise wasn't going to be that bad, and I got my person that I knew I could get to come out and fire the guns, and we just did a lot of research that showed that was going to be bad on their property value. So I got some of my fellow commissioners to stand with me there, and we stopped that from going in out there. Another situation that happened in District 7, they come and wanted to put a cell tower right in the middle of a neighborhood that was going to damage the property values of the people that were in that neighborhood out in East Brainerd area. So we stood against that, and that has a backstory to it. It's kind of hard to believe, but the commission had a vote, a majority vote, to vote that down. And then a couple of weeks later, we found out that the federal government has a rule to where we could not do that. That if they met certain criteria, they were allowed to do that. So that was overturned. Our choice was overturned by the government. So the only reason I wanted to tell you that, you ever go out there and see that cell tower, well, we voted it down. And the federal government come back and let them put this in. That's kind of hard to believe, but that is what happened. And then the third example, and if any of you in here haven't heard this situation, then I don't know where you've been, but the wastewater treatment plant that they were wanting to put in, which me and my fellow commissioners allotted the money for that wastewater treatment plant. Let me say right off the bat, we need a wastewater treatment plant out in that area, the Ottawa area up in through there in Harrison. We need that, sorely need that. But what they did is they came in, and we didn't know anything about it. They came in all of a sudden and said, okay, here's where we're going to put it. Well, it was right close to neighborhoods. It was going to ruin the property values there again of the neighbors in there. So we fought that and got that voted down where they couldn't put it in that situation out there and save their properties. So I've never forgotten who's put me in office on my county commission seat. And I've never forgotten who I represent out there, which brings me to where I'm at today. About 8 months ago, of course, it's probably been 10 months ago now from these notes because we've been running a couple of months. 10 months ago, I had a couple of people come to me that worked in the office, in the assessor's office, and said, we've got problems in there. There's just several problems in there, and this office is not running right. And people had been worked in there 30 years. They'd worked under Mr. Ramsey and Mr. Bennett, and he said it's just, really the word they use is chaotic. I mean, it's just chaotic in there. And they said, would you consider running? Well, my first reaction, I said, well, that's really not what I've got my sights set on. I've got my CPA practice. I like the commission, and so I'm comfortable where I'm at. Well, they came back to me later on, about a month later, with some business people, and they said, this is a serious situation. Would you decide to run? So I went home and talked to my wife about it, and after a few hours of her crying, she said, I'll never forget what she told me. When we finally said, she said yes, because anyone in here knows that if you're gonna, and if anybody tells you this isn't the case, they're not being honest with you. If you run for public office, you've got to have the support of your spouse. You've got to. And my wife has always been very supportive. This one I had to push a little harder, but she said, when we decided, she agreed, and we said we were gonna run, she made the statement, she said, well, the one thing I can say about you is you never do anything easy. You never try to do something easy. You always tackle the hard stuff, and maybe that is true. But after us talking for it for a few months and praying about it and stuff, we decided to run. And we felt that, and I feel that there's a need for a professional person with a technical background in the office. I think that's the main problem. My background is in finance and accounting and finance. I've worked with budgets, business valuations, and I've supervised several people over a period of 40 years. I've got the type of background that you would need to go in and supervise an office like that, and I think that's what's lacking. One of the biggest problems that we found out when we were looking at that office is the turnover. Now, you know an office that important, and I can tell you right up front, a lot of people don't know a lot about this office. It's one of the most important offices in Hamilton County because here's what they do. They set the value on every one of your properties in here. Well, what does that do? That determines how much tax you're going to pay because they set the value, then the county commission sets the rate on that, and those two together decide how much tax. So this is very, very important office. Well, you would think stability and experience in that office is one of the most important things. Well, since the assessor has come in 3 years ago, there's been a 25% turnover. There's roughly 40 some odd employees in that office. There's been about a 25% turnover. In the appraiser position that people go out and appraise the property, a 50% turnover. At least half the people have left. Now let me say, when that says turnover, several different things. People retire, people quit, or people's fired or let go. So among those three, there's in that office, there's at least a 50% turnover. And I've got a sheet here that I like to show, and I try to be, obviously if you're going to run for an office, you've got to point out some things that you think's wrong with office. I try to do it in a respectful manner and just point out the things without getting into personalities. But my opponent, and I brought it tonight, my opponent has a list that it's his campaign material, and he's passed it out, and it's told several things on here that he's had. And along this line of the turnover, he has one of his things that he's done in here, which is true. He said, I hired the first female appraisers in the office, and he's hired 3. Within about a year, 2 of those have already left. So there's a problem with keeping employees in the office, which to me is from leadership and from supervision. And there's another one he puts on here that says 2018 East Tennessee Assessor of the Year. Sounds like a great award, a good award. The only thing I question on that is how in the world could you win Assessor of the Year with a turnover of 50% of your assessors and 25% in there? I don't know what they base this on, what they base that award on, but I have a hard time understanding that. I know when I was young and played sports, sometimes they would give what was called a participation award. And maybe this might be a participation award, I don't know. But I find it hard that you would be the Assessor of the Year all over Tennessee when there's that many problems in the office. And let me say this, because I made this speech one time before, and some people was here from my opponent's campaign, which his campaign manager's here tonight. And so then what they went back and told all the people in the office is they told the people, hey, he said none of y'all are any good, you can't do your jobs. Here's the statement I want to make tonight. Let me be clear. There's a lot of good employees in that office that's been there a long time, a lot of years, that are very, very good employees that do a great job. The problem is not with the employees, it's with the leadership in the office, not the employees. There's good employees in there. So I want to make that clear. It's not the employees, it's the leadership. One of the main differences between me and my opponent, and that's what you do when you run, is you say your differences. One of the main differences between me and my opponent is I work for the taxpayers, and my opponent seems to work against the taxpayers. Let me give you a couple examples. In 2017, that's when he first went into office and did the appraisal, and they had appraisal. He went in 16, you do appraisal a year after you're elected. He went in 2017. He proposed a plan that would charge all the municipalities in Hamilton County an extra fee for doing their appraisals. So in other words, if you lived in Red Bank or Soddy Daisy or Lookout Mountain, Signal Mountain, and you were a municipality, he looked up a rule that it is a law in Tennessee. They allow you to charge municipalities. Well, it's never been done in Hamilton County. Mr. Ramsey never done that. Mr. Bennett never done that. To me, it doesn't make sense. I mean, county residents pay county taxes. The people that live in those cities, they pay their county taxes for services. To go in and say, hey, by the way, we're doing the appraisal for your property, we want to charge you an extra fee to do that, just really doesn't make sense. But he stated when he was going to do this, he said, hey, this will give us another $770,000 in the general fund in the county. We can use that. Well, needless to say, the municipalities just started bombarding all of the commissioners and said, what's fair about this? I mean, what's fair? They're charging us again. So the commission thought the same thing as the citizens thought. So what the commission done is voted no. The commission has to approve something like that. And the commission voted no. We're not going to charge the citizens extra to do that. So we voted that down. Another example, I mentioned earlier about the WWTA, and this is important. WWTA was trying to put that wastewater treatment plant out there in that certain area. Well, as you know, the WWTA said, we need this area. This is the best area, which just on a scale of a map, it seemed like it was the best area. What made it bad is it was going to damage property values in that area so bad. And the studies showed the property values was going to be damaged. Well, what the assessor did, our assessor did, he went to an assessor from out of town and got him to write a letter and send it to the WWTA in town saying, hey, we've done some of this before over in Murfreesboro, I think it was, Williamson County, and it didn't damage our property. So he was working with WWTA against those residents in Ottawa. Now, the only problem I had with that is he was the assessor. He didn't have a dog in that hunt, had nothing to do with that. But he was out there working against, the way I saw it, working against those employees. I don't know the reason why, but he was working against those, not employees, those residents that lived in District 9. He was working against them on their property values at the same time when I was trying to save their property values. Let me say this. An office holder that's in office normally runs on his or her record. I told you a second ago I ran for my second term on the county commission about a year ago. I had an opponent in a Republican primary. I had a Republican run against me in the Republican primary. I knew one thing about my opponent, his name. He qualified, I knew his name. That's the only thing I knew about my opponent. I ran on my record as what I had done those first 4 years. That's what I ran on. And that's normally what you run on when you're running for re-election. But when you don't have a record to run on, you have to rely on some other means. When we first started this campaign, I started going to people for support, started talking to them support. So many people I went to talk to said, boy, I hear this is going to be a dirty campaign. I said, do what? And they said, I hear it's going to be a dirty campaign. I said, well, where'd you hear that? Well, the word is it's going to be a dirty campaign. I said, well, I don't know where you hear that. I said, I've never said it's going to be a dirty campaign. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know. It's not going to be a dirty campaign as far as I'm concerned. I heard it over and over and over again. Well, fast forward, and I found out probably what they were talking about. Like I said, sometimes when you don't have a record to run on, you have to take a different approach. Let me show you an exhibit here that I brought. So I'd keep it straight on here, I put Exhibit 1. Let me show you what this is. Here's what this is right here. And you're welcome to look at this back here and everything. This is someone from out of town. This happened about 2 weeks ago. This is out of town from Holt Summit, Missouri. What it is, it's a request. We request all law enforcement related records, past records related to Randall Fairbanks, all criminal record related to Randall Fairbanks. Now, I know I said earlier that, and this wasn't hard for me to believe, I said earlier that my opponent's campaign manager's in here, and I've seen him, this thing's been done before. several times before. So they got my criminal record. Well, also on here is the results on there. So they were disappointed because I had one report on here, and it was where I'd reported that somebody had stole my little sticker tag off my license plate. So that was my criminal record. So when you don't get anything there, step B, Exhibit 2. This last week they've told me that somebody, now that was from Missouri. This one's from New Jersey. Somebody from New Jersey is interested in this race. Somebody from New Jersey has pulled all of my expense statements since I've been on the county commission. All my expense statements. Now you can say it. He can say, we didn't do that. Well, so people in New Jersey's done it, so they're interested in my race. But they've pulled all my expense statements. Now let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, what they're looking for here. Let me help you what they're looking for here. I've traveled to these conferences. Number one, what they're going to say, I'll tell you ahead of time. I'll let him know ahead of time what he's going to say. Number one, what they're looking for is, my wife has went to some of these conferences. I'll save you time, Vince. I'll tell you what. My wife's went to some of these conferences. What they want to do is look through here and say, hey, did the taxpayers pay for his wife to go? So I'll save you time. Look all you want through there and everything. Every time my wife went, I paid every dime for her. You know why? We've got finance people down there that I couldn't get through stuff paying for my wife. So they'll do that. Number two, when that won't work, let me tell you what number two will be. It'll say, hey, taxpayers, this is your taxpayers' money. He's traveling all over the place on your taxpayer dollar. That's what he's doing. Well, let me tell you what these conferences are. And I have people that will back me up. If you'll check, a lot of our commissioners go to these conferences. Very, very good conferences and we pay to be members of these organizations. We bring back good things that they do from other places. It's very, very helpful. Now, why I have quite a few is, like I told you before, I've served as chairman 2 times. So there's some of these conferences I've went to myself and no other commissioners have went to because I was the chairman and I've represented the commission on those. But that's what these are for. So I'll probably get exhibit number 3 coming in a week or 2. I don't know. There'll be something come through. But this is what really upsets me more than anything else. When you're in office and you've got a record, run on that record. Don't try to look at me and say, I guess what they was hoping is that when I was 20 years old, he got caught with dope, or he shot somebody or something. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. And so that's what happened there. Let me make one last point, because I told you I wouldn't stay too long. Here's another one that they're spreading around. They're saying, why would a Republican, we've got a Republican in the office. Why would another Republican run? Well, let me say this. I said I've held office before. I never think I'm entitled to the office that I hold as county commissioner because I'm a Republican. You know, I'm proud to be a Republican. I serve as a Republican. Should I be allowed to stay in that office because I'm a Republican? No. It's because of the job I do. And I need to earn that office. I don't need to get to be in that office just because I'm a Republican. I told you before I ran against a Republican. The guy was an okay guy. He had just outlived his term. And so they elected somebody else to do something. And we've got the best example of this just recently, maybe about 8 years ago. A good guy serving as trustee, his name was Carl Levi, a good man. Had another Republican come up and run against him that was a county commissioner, Bill Hollander, another great guy, good guy. Bill thought, hey, I can do something better in the office. I can make the office better. So Bill Hollander run against him in a primary and won. It was a good race, close race, but Bill won. And y'all know since then he's done a great job. He's a great trustee, made some good changes and has done a good job. So it's not unprecedented that one Republican's running against another. I don't think an excuse can ever be made, hey, wait, don't run against me, I'm a Republican. Here's the thing, you've got to do your job efficiently and do it right to earn to get to go back in the office if you want the office. And when I flip the last card, it says, thank you for letting me share with you tonight. I appreciate y'all letting me come. I'll answer any questions you've got, and we'll have some more information coming out. And I really, Brendan, you heard me speak at the Pachyderm before, and I didn't go into depth. Of course, I didn't have all these investigations on me when I had those. So I've I've went over some of those tonight, but I didn't mean to act like
Did you find out anything about yourself?
Well, I found out that the only thing I'd ever done is reported that little sticker was gone off my car and everything. But that's troublesome. But it's politics. It shouldn't be that way. It should not be that way. But unfortunately, it's that way. And so you have to endure that. I'll tell you this, I've told many people this before. I'm tough. I can take it. The only thing that would ever make me quit because of it is the effect it has on your family, on my daughters and my wife. Especially my daughters, they really rail about it. I've done all I can to make sure they didn't get on the phone when we've had these things done. But anyway, that's all. I appreciate you letting me. The election is March the 3rd. Like I said, it's a Republican primary, and I'm so excited because they put the ballot out the other day. Usually this election it's the only county election during this cycle. It's the only one that runs in the off year. And usually they put it's buried way down somewhere. Well, I saw the ballot the other day, and our ballot says President Trump, and then he's got 2 or 3 guys running against him. Then the next one is the Assessor of Property. And then it's all those delegates that you elect to go to the conventions and stuff. So our election will be right there on the front page. But I've got some material back here. Like I said, he said I had a yard sign. If you want to take a yard sign, I've got some material back there. It's got my phone number on it. You're free to call me. Ask me any questions anytime, but I appreciate you allowing me to come and speak to you tonight. Any questions? And I've got somebody that's usually the toughest on me has got a question for me. What is it?
You pointed out some things that the current assessor is telling that he's done and accomplished. And something else, and I wanted to ask you about this, I remember reading in the newspaper, I think it was maybe Sunday, he was bragging about the fact he had turned in quite a bit of money back into the budget. Have you looked into that, and what's the explanation to that? I can't.
I've looked in the budget, and that was a little too long to go in tonight, but I've looked through the budgets. Of course, we have to approve the budgets. So I know the budgets inside and out, and I know, and when he put on here, he's got on here that he reduced the budget $400,000. Budget when he came into office was $4 million, now it's 3.7. That statement's true. When he came in office, it's $4 million, now it's 3.7. But you have to have the rest of the story. You have to have the rest of the story. The reason that's a true statement is every 4 years there's an extra $300,000 in the budget because it's an appraisal year, and that's overtime. So guess what? There's always been that roughly $4 million budget. After he came in office, it was already in the budget, Mr. Bennett's budget. They did the appraisal. Well, the next 3 years that hadn't been in his budget, so his budgets went down $300,000. Guess what? Whoever's the assessor this next year, that budget's going to be back up. That $300,000 will be back in there. So is that true? When I came in, it was $4 million, and now it's 3.7 since I've been in there. That's a true statement. Is it misleading? Either, and the point I make is either he don't understand the budget or he's trying to mislead you, because there's going to be $300,000 more, roughly that much money, in this next budget, whoever's budget. So I mean, you can play with numbers all you want, but here's one thing that if I'd have talked to him, I'd have told him, don't try to fool me on budgets. I mean, a lot of things I don't know about. I don't know about a car. I can't fix a car, but I know budgets. And right when I saw that, I knew exactly what it meant. I thought, well, that's why $300,000 is on there. And so that overtime's not been in his budget yet. If he's reelected, or if I'm elected, we'll have that overtime back in that budget. It's imperative that you have that overtime to do the election. So that was a more in-depth thing, so I wasn't going to go into it, but yes, sir.
I have a couple of requests. Before you arrived, there was a mention about the governor, the legislature in Virginia. They're threatening to pass all these anti-gun laws, take everybody's guns away from them. And most of the counties in Virginia have already set up a Second Amendment committee that says that that all those laws wouldn't affect those counties because it's a Second Amendment sanctuary. And I'd like to see Hamilton County become a Second Amendment area like it, a Second Amendment sanctuary.
Well, let me tell you, sir, if I'm elected assessor, I would too, but I mean, this office wouldn't, I mean, I'll be honest with you, this office wouldn't have. I guess you're talking in general to the general group.
Yeah, but you're still on the commission now.
I'm on the commission now.
Take a vote of the county commission to set this up as a sanctuary for Second Amendment.
I'm assuming if we do it in Hamilton County, because almost anything happens in Hamilton County, the commission has to approve, yes.
Yes. The other thing is, if you have any influence on our mayor, I'd like to see him vote no on bringing extra refugees into our county. I think we need a timeout. We've been taking them out for years, 20, 30 years. We need a timeout.
Let me just say this here.
And I've called him twice, but he won't return my call.
Here's what's happening on that, and I would never want to speak for him, but we were in a meeting yesterday. Number one, he hasn't signed that yet. And yesterday in our meeting, and I can only reiterate what he said publicly because I wouldn't want to speak for him, but publicly had said he was still studying it. He wasn't sold on it yet. Of course, the deadline's the 21st, which is this next Tuesday. Now, here's what I thought was odd on that. It was set up to where the mayor and the mayor only signs that. One of the few things I've ever seen that the county commission don't have anything to do with. No. But here's what they did. One commissioner in that meeting yesterday said, hey, let's take a vote to encourage him or give him some backing and say, we want to see you sign that. Well, that didn't pass. That didn't pass. I think it was 3 people. 4-3. Three people voted to let him do that, but we didn't. I think the 3 was Democrat votes, I believe. Is that okay to say? I believe it was the 3 Democrats on the commission that voted to allow him to do that. I mean, that's a fact, so I guess that's okay to say.
Well, in essence, our governor violated the law by not going through the legislature in action. We voted those people in to take care of the people. Mm-hmm. He shouldn't be just deciding on his own to do that. So he's going to suffer. He's going to be a one-term governor.
And I think the problem, correct me if I'm wrong, commissioners, I think the problem the commission had most about it was this was all of a sudden brought up yesterday. It was just we hadn't had time to study it and find out all what they said. Hey, the president set this in place. The governors could accept it or not. Our governor did accept it. And so now the mayors have to sign off. Well, what we found out yesterday is the mayor had been talking to them for about a month about it. Us commissioners didn't know anything about it, nothing hardly at all about it. And so it was brought on us yesterday, and so we just didn't feel comfortable with doing it. If you read the reports, the mayor wasn't comfortable with it. He didn't sign it yesterday. He's got till Tuesday to sign it if it happens. So Tuesday will get here awful quick. I don't read the paper and see if that happens, but I wouldn't have a lot of hope that that's going to happen. It's just my feeling. Yes, sir.
You mentioned one of the current problems that you've identified is the high turnover rate, and specifically within the assessors, 50% definitely high. Do you have a breakdown of how how that turnover has come? Like what percentage was in firing?
Yes.
Retirees.
Did I bring that? I've got a spreadsheet on that. But I don't have it with me. But I can get it to you. And there's a mix. There's a mix in through there. There's a few that's retired. There's a few that's quit. And then so it is a mix in through there. There's not one a lot heavier than the other. But I can.
Because it's obviously a lot different if like you had 75% of the people retire.
Right.
That's obviously not as big of a problem as if you had to fire 75% or 75%.
Right. One thing that's happening that I've noticed happening is there's been, I won't say several, but a few people in there that's already been fired that he hired. So he's hired some and then fired them, and then he's hired some and they've quit, and then of course they've had some retirements. So it's evenly distributed. Yes, sir.
What was the average pay for those
Those positions.
Oh, they were higher paid, because here's what the, another thing on this sheet is it says that, you know, some of the, I had it written down on another sheet, that some of the cost had went down. Well, one cost they're saving on some now, which is a legitimate cost, is retirement, pay that you put into the retirement and stuff, because the older employees have retired. Now let me tell you, one of the costs that has went up, and this makes sense, one of the costs that's almost tripled is training and education in the department. Well, you got to train those people. You know, so a high turnover means your cost is going to go way up of training, and it has. It's went from I'm just doing my memory, but it's went from about $5,000 in the budget to $17,000. And it's because we're constantly training people. The turnover, we're constantly training them. So retirement benefits and stuff that they put into the retirement system, you can see in the budgets where that's went down. That makes sense, because some of these older employees that have been there for a while have retired. The training budget has gone up for the same reason I just told you. We're training a lot of people in there. Was it you that had your? No, you. Yes.
Yeah, I realize you're kind of here with two hats tonight. You're running for office and you're currently in one.
Yes.
This one is, there's been a news story recently, and I'm not sure how accurate all this is, but that the Hamilton County Education Department purchased a building, I think for $500,000. And supposedly it's going to be for them to set up a pharmacy and a clinic. And I'm curious if there's been any, what's that for? I mean, if they're going to, I think one thing someone had said, well, that was for teachers, and it, you know, it just seems like outside looking in without any cost analysis, it seems like that would be the sort of thing that, well, wouldn't it be insurance, maybe pay a little more for insurance than pay $500,000 and then redo a building and then pay all those other costs? I just...
Let me let you know my perspective on what I know about that. I was surprised in the beginning to find out the education department wasn't a part of this. It's been 5 or 7 years ago that the county did that. We got our own pharmacy and we got our own doctors down there. So I couldn't hardly figure this out in my mind, because we go to the doctor and it doesn't cost us anything. We go to the pharmacy and it's very little what we pay our part and everything. I thought, that's going to cost us more. Remarkably, and we're about 5 years into it, you wouldn't believe how much money we have saved on insurance cost and all of that. So it was a trial base. They did a lot of study, but it was a trial basis. It's been unbelievable. I'll tell you what our push is now, and I hear them talk about it constantly now. Our push in the county is get everybody. Oddly enough, some people don't use it. Well, we had doctors that we used to use, but when it came free, that's my doctor right there. And so we go down there. The push is to get every single, so let me say this. Now, they're using that model. So to answer your question, if it goes the way ours goes, it'll be a remarkable savings. And I hadn't heard they'd went that far, is to buy the building and set that all up. I was just so surprised, and I just told a teacher one day, I was talking to her, and I said, well, one benefit that you have, this was egg on my face. I said, well, one benefit you have is the free clinic. And she let me know real quick, they didn't participate in that. I don't know why, because it's the county, but they didn't. So now they're doing the same thing we're doing. But I can tell you, only from the county's perspective, I can tell you, and we can show you numbers where it's remarkable the money we're saving for doing that. It's in place about 6 years now, and it's remarkable. In the insurance cost.
So that's good. You save on insurance costs. You still have the staffing. You still have the operations. But yeah, I'd love to. Anything you can provide us with that, I'll be happy to get out to membership, because they saw that story and I got some feedback on that as well.
Yes, and on the surface, when I first heard we were doing that, I thought, well, that's a benefit they're providing to us, but man, that'd be maybe be expensive. And so we started looking into it. It was just the opposite. I mean, and now we have a record of it's 5 or 6 years.
We go over that every year in our budget, and we watch it historically.
We watch our insurance costs have gone like this every year.
It's amazing.
And it's from that. So they pinpoint that every year. So So it is, but I can, Brendan, we'll get you the figures on that, like the historical thing it's done in 6 years. That'd be a good figure to show you, everything. Any other questions?
One thing I would like to make clear is we have no say in how the school system spends the money. All we have control over is what we give.
And that comes up every budget time, is that what the school board does, and we don't want to get too deep in this, but they give us a budget and we fund that budget and give them the money. Well, what happened this last time was we were besieged by people saying, County Commission, you wouldn't give the teachers a raise. Once we hand that money, state law says, once we hand them that money, we have not one say-so. Now, we fund their budget on the budget they give us. We fund it on thinking, oh yeah, they've got a teacher's raise in there. That's what happened this last time. They got a teacher's raise in there. Well, nothing says they have to, when we give them the money, have to spend it on what they said. And that happened a little bit this last time. The teachers didn't get a raise. Well, guess who got the commissioners, the 5 commissioners that voted against the tax increase, hated teachers and wouldn't give them a raise. Well, we had nothing to do. The budget we funded, even without the tax increase, had some teacher raise in there. By the time they got the money, there was no teacher. And I don't want to get on the school board, but.
It brings up another question. Can you compare the percentage of county budget the schools consumed when the first year you entered the commission to current fiscal year? Just percentages.
It's 65% of our budget.
It's 65 now. Do you remember when we went in office?
61%.
It's held right in. Since we've been on there, it's always been above 60. So, but it is climbing some. It's 65 this last year. It might have been 61. And I want to make sure you know I'm trying to guess. I'm not saying for sure, but I don't remember it ever being under 60 since I've been on there. The 60%. So
When I went on in 2010, it was right around 60% then.
in 2010. So it's always been about that 60%.
It went up 25 million without a tax increase this time.
Yeah.
That was local, state, and federal additional dollars.
And let me tell you this, there's a lot of, just to try to be totally honest, there's a lot of debate. The biggest debate on this last budget was, it was all operational. In other words, they wanted 34 million extra operational money, and we said no. The big elephant in the room is the facilities. You know, we've got buildings falling and stuff. The facilities is the big, and everywhere I ever speak, I make it clear to say, I don't know that answer. It's, what'd they come out with, a $500 million?
1.4 billion.
1 billion. If we was to fix everything, which obviously we couldn't. So there's going to have to be some hard decisions made on, like, closing some schools and some stuff like that. So we've got a huge task in front of us, and I'm glad I'm not on the school board, but we have to be involved in that. I mean, because we have to fund whatever they want. So it's a tough.
Another thing that's not clear to a lot of folks, if we'd have did the tax increase and given them 34 million, we'd have had to done it again next year.
Does everybody understand that rule?
State law, we can't reduce
Not
the
state
budget.
law.
Their budget can never go down. I mean, our funding can never go down from what we funded the year before. We can increase it, but it can't go down. So if they would have got that 34 million this year, next year, we couldn't, whatever that 34 had brought them to, we couldn't go below that. So in effect, we'd have had to give that same 34. Yeah, state law says you can't ever cut their budget. You cannot increase it, but we can't ever cut it. That's kind of scary, but that's what they say.
I'm a big believer in natural growth instead of forced growth.
Yes.
On that. A couple of observations, and one thing I've seen, you see a lot of yard signs out along the highway, and I just noticed that your opponent's yard sign, some of them have "Vote Republican." Well, both candidates are Republican.
Let me tell you where that came from. And a lot of people have called me upset. Well, you're a Republican too. Well, one thing he's doing smart. Last time, remember, he had a primary and then had a general. Well, he used some signs in the general that said, hey, it was a Republican and a Democrat. And he said, vote Republican. That's what he was wanting to do, vote Republican. Well, he does like I guess, smart politician and everything. He's reusing his signs. So yeah. So people called me and said, hey, you're a Republican too. And I said, yeah, if you vote Republican, I'll be on your ballot. So that's where that's from. That's an assumption, but I think that's probably true. He's using some older signs. Oh, yes, this gentleman.
Again, it may be that because the school board does their own budget, that you don't have a direct answer for this, but one thing that bothers me and my wife constantly is the issue that you addressed there, that all of a sudden they're going, oh, we need a new school, this school's falling down, this school's falling down. Why are the buildings maintained and we don't have to have a new building? Now, I didn't realize there can come to a point buildings have to be replaced because of infrastructure issues, challenges that are beyond repairable situations. I know that can be a reality. But it just seems like we've always, in the county, had too many times buildings would be declared unrepairable and then they're sold and somebody else says, hey, that's a great building, I'll take it.
Well, let me say this. What would happen if you built a house and started living in it and lived in it 30 years and never done anything for 30 years? After 30 years, you'd say, oh my goodness, I have to spend $200,000. Right. What has happened in the past, without calling any names, what's happened in the past, somebody's dropped the ball and not kept the facilities up over the years. They've dropped the ball. I mean, it's obvious they have. They hadn't repaired them. They haven't done something to them. Now, granted, I'm talking about some of these buildings are 50 years old. So we're not talking about just the commissioners or whoever, the school board members, whoever's problem. It's been going on that long. They haven't kept those buildings up. And you cannot, if you go as long as we've went now, you cannot buy, that apple's way too big to eat. There's no way we can do the 1.4 billion. There's just no way. And so somebody has dropped the ball in the past and over a long period of time. They haven't kept them up. Now, I know one thing they mentioned when I hear them.
When we came on the commission, we were told $247 million in deferred maintenance, which I think they only budgeted about $2 million to go back towards facilities. And now that they've hired this MGT to go out and assess all the buildings, they've come back and said $1.4 billion. I don't mean to answer the question.
Hey, let me tell you.
That because some people don't know. And two, we inherited some old schools when we took over for the city.
Let me tell you one interesting point real quick that has been tossed around in the commission by the commissioners that have been tossed around. We say, Commissioner Smedley said they got 24 extra million there. What happens is there's growth money every year. In other words, tax increases from new building, new taxes come up. Every year, that growth money, we automatically say is yours. Here's an interesting thing that has come up. It's been talked about, not publicly, but privately. It's been talked about. The commission has thought about, what about this idea? What about us taking that growth money, because we don't have to give them the growth money. Remember I told you earlier, we have to fund them from before? The idea's been tossed around. What about if we, the commission, keeps that growth money and it goes toward facilities? Basically what we'd be doing is tell them, here's how you're spending that money before we get, remember once they get it, we can't tell them. But so that's been tossed around. Now you can think of pros and cons on that, but I don't think that might be too bad an idea. How else we're going? So her example, and you were real close on it, her example is this year it had been 25 million. No, you don't get that growth money. Now, golly bum, if I had a school board member in here and superintendent in here, he'd turn flips saying, because they say, of course, expenses increase and they need that growth money. But that's being tossed around. And what you might even could do on that is do it to a certain amount. Hey, $5 million in growth money we're going to put each year to, something like that. And maybe not take all the growth money, but $5 million. Something's got to be done. I noticed this, what Commissioner Smedley said. Every year when you see their budget, very little bit is budgeted for facilities maintenance. Very small amount. That's why they can't keep it up.
Well, it seems that's a problem throughout our country for the last 50 years or more, that we do not budget for maintenance on our highways or bridges or buildings. It looks to me like we're buying cheap affection of the public with programs that makes us look good, and then we're not doing enough.
And how can you get away? How can you get away with that? The reason you can get away with that, spending on operational is in front of your face and it's that year, so you have to do it there. Maintenance, you know, heck, you know, we could easily say that now. That's their problem. That's somebody else. I'm not going to be on the commission from now on. I'm not going to be on the school board from now on. That's their problem. So it's easy to do that. It's hard to bite that bullet and say, guys, we're going to have to, and so some of us are in position now to where the bullet's going to have to be bitten from some of the people that said, hey, let them do it and let them do it.
Randy, I got a statement. I've spoken to Brennan, but as conservatives in this room, Hamilton County has got to take back that school board. Conservatives set back, let Unify Ed come in, take our school board, take 2 seats on our county commission, and we got to take those back. April the 12th is, am I correct there, Brennan, is the qualifying deadline for school board seats in 1, 7, 4, where's Kathy and Linda? Is that?
2.
2. Those 4 seats are up in August. That's a nonpartisan race. And the problem as conservatives, we've ignored nonpartisan races. We've got to get involved. So if you know a good candidate in those districts, especially District 4, that we're having a problem, that's Warren Mackey. It's an inner city district. It has the largest percentage of I-zone or opportunity zone schools. Jenny Hill is currently the school board member. We have been told she is not seeking re-election. We need a really good candidate. If you know someone, get in touch with Brennan, Hamilton County Republican Party, Good Government Coalition. Let it be known so we can gather conservatives and Jenny, not Jenny Hill, Tiffany Roberts.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
District
Roberts.
District 4.
And we're, like Dean said, where we can fall asleep on those are nonpartisan races. So we kind of think, oh, they're nonpartisan. Well, they're either going to be a conservative or a liberal, one of the two, even though they don't run on that. And we've got a heavy dose of non-conservatives on the school board now. So we do need some more conservatives. Yes, sir.
I have 2 questions, one for each, one for you as candidate, one for you as school board. I'll start with one with...
Oh, county commission. I'm not on the school board.
County commission, sorry. We're talking about school board.
Yeah.
As candidate, is there any specific reforms or changes to the office that you would be implementing within the first 100 days that you are able to speak on right now, or do you have any ideas?
Well, my first, obviously from some of the stuff I've told you in here, my first job when I got in there from day one is stop the bleeding. Keep my employees, the ones that's in there now, keep them and hire some good employees. It's got to be. There's an appraisal coming up this next year. And so how important is that? So the my first concern when I get in there, very first concern is to remedy that, to keep the employees that I've got. And that I don't have any idea how that'll go until I get in there to say, but I've got to go to those employees and say, hey, you've been with us. We're going to try to build a new team. Let's stay with us. That'll be the whole thing, because not much other that I can do would matter is if that bleeding still happens and people keep still leaving, because we've got an reappraisal coming here next year, after the election the next year. Well, just think if the office lost another 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 people, it'd be disastrous. So we've got to stop that bleeding.
And then for you...
As a county commissioner.
I'm sorry?
As a county commissioner, not a school board member.
So I wanted to piggyback off of what this gentleman had said earlier, because I'm not concerned about the state, but I am concerned about the federal government, because you even got Republicans stepping up about talking about gun laws. You've got Dan Crenshaw talking about red flag laws. You've got even the president passed bump stock ban. And so, and I'll open this up to all the commissioners here. Are you willing to put forward here in the next month an actual Second Amendment sanctuary county, pass that within Hamilton County?
Yeah, let me defer to Commissioner Smedley. How'd you like that one?
Well, this is easy.
Stand up, Commissioners.
I never answer yes or no without doing my homework. And knowing exactly,
And she does a lot of homework.
I mean.
And that's what I can say about,
And I think it would be crazy, to say yes or no without really diving in.
But you're at least open to it.
I'm open.
Oh, yes.
to talking about any subject. Almost. There's a few that I'm not.
Brendan, don't let us hold you too long. Don't. Sorry.
We need to talk
Oh,
about
yes.
what it is that you're asking us to do. and then
Early
we need to
voting,
sort of
it's less
take
than a
some
month
time.
away.
Yeah, I'll tell
I
them.
can go online and get a copy.
And I need to know if there's something that we can even do locally. I mean, I would need to know that. That's just like yesterday when we were asked to vote on this, this resolution to support the mayor in terms of the refugees, allowing them to come into the state. We can get up there and talk about it all day long and debate it and vote all day long, but at the end of the day, we have no say in that. It requires a signature from our county mayor.
Well, it would be legal if the board approved it and the mayor signed it, if that's what you do. But I could go online and get copies of the other counties, like in Virginia. I think 80% of the counties have already signed those Second Amendment sanctuary rules. That means that any of these gun laws against common people, law-abiding citizens, is void. And they're even the sheriffs in those counties are saying they won't enforce anything that they eventually come up with in Virginia. And he's actually deputizing hundreds and hundreds of people to keep that from being an issue in his counties.
Well, if you guys want to send us information, we're easy to find. Go to hamiltontn.gov and you can send it to all 9 commissioners.
Yes.
We're happy to look at it.
I'm Charles Driver, and I talk to you pretty regular about.
Oh, yes. Didn't we just talk?
Yeah, we did.
We just talked more. I called you back too, Bubba.
Hey,
Told me yesterday.
let me say this one thing that Brendan did remind me to say. March the 3rd is the election. Early voting is February the 12th. That's less than a month. Early voting, February the 12th through the 25th.
I've got one more question, and it's pertaining to the office. And there wasn't a lot of talk about this evening, but how will you ensure that you are doing a fair, an accurate and a fair assessment of properties? I've had to dispute assessments myself in the past. So it's very important to me, owning the business and the home, to know that I'm getting a fair assessment. And I don't mean low by that, I mean fair.
Well, everyone I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of people, I haven't had anybody, even my backers, financial backers, I have not had one person that either has said or indicated they would like favor. Everyone to the person has told me, I want it fair. I want to pay my taxes what I owe, but I don't want to pay yours. I don't want to pay part of yours. And all that goes on a fair assessment. Every piece of property has to be assessed at a fair value, no matter what business, what person, whatever it is, who you know, who you don't know, where you play golf, no matter where, it has to be a fair and equitable assessment. And so that's all people want, is they want a fair assessment. That's all they want. They don't want to pay somebody else's portion. They want to pay their own, and that's all they want to pay. So it'll be understood when I'm in the office. It'll be understood. Guys, that's our goal in here, is to assess everyone's property fairly. Everyone's. That's a goal. That's our standard that we want to go by. Did you have one more question, sir? Yeah. You still upset about that $500,000 building?
I was just going to say that I think it's critical that people will understand. I had a lady tell me years ago that she never votes in the primary, she just votes in the general election. Primary voting is backbone for our system. And a lot of times the deck can be stacked. There's a lot of dirty politics that happens in primaries. So get out and vote and tell everyone, get out in the primaries and vote. That's our best chance to get good candidates in office.
And these local races affect you as much or more. I mean, it's day to day. We're here with you day to day. So vote. And like that sign says now, vote Republican in March the 3rd. Because now, let me remind you of this. We said earlier, there's no primary in this election. So March the 3rd, no general. So the primary is March the 3rd. The winner of the primary is the assessor. So.
Last question, how unusual is it to see a property assessed for less from 1 year to the next?
How unusual?
Yeah.
Unless something happens that affects that property in an adverse way, it would be unusual for an assessment to go down. Unless, like, say if you had a house on a piece of land, everything, a house burned down, or, you know, if you had something that devalued that property, then that would be a normal case. But for just one to go down arbitrarily is kind of unusual.
Especially if it's being used highest and best use.
Yeah, a business one especially. Yes, sir.
Is there any evidence out there that the property assessor now has used some kind of funny stuff when he assesses property as of now?
Well,
You know, if it's fair or unfair or?
well, the only, when you say evidence, the only thing is if you look at the records and see what properties went from here and might have went down, and if you try to assess what the reason was. There's several cases of that. If you want to look into it, there's several cases.
I will.
That'd be good, something good for you to look into. I can guide you in the right direction if you want me to. Any other questions? Thank y'all for allowing me to be here tonight. I got too much to hold here. Appreciate it. Thank you.